Saturday View on Midlands 103. With thanks to Cllr Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumCleanEnergy.com. Have your say. Call 0818 300 103. Text or WhatsApp your Saturday View to 083 3010 103.
Good morning, and you're very welcome to Saturday View with me, Ronan Berry. Coming up on this morning's show, a 93% turnout recorded in one ballot box in County Westmeath. What's behind that phenomenon? Also, I'll be talking to Aontú leader Peadar Tóbín as he reflects on an unsuccessful campaign to become an MEP for Midlands North West, and he'll also reflect on Aontú's performance in the local elections both here in the Midlands and across the country, and talk about what they expect and anticipate in the run-up to a general election. I'll also be talking to members of the LGBT plus community, as a recent survey suggests that quite a significant proportion of them would consider leaving the Midlands due to attitudes and behaviours towards people from the LGBT community. But to begin this morning, I'm delighted to be joined here by Cllr Neil Feighery. He's been re-elected in County Offaly in the Tullamore Municipal District for the second time. Not only that, but he topped the poll in the region. Very good morning, Neil, but topping the poll, it must be a very proud moment for you.
Yes, Ronan, look at it. It was something that, while I knew I was getting a good response in the doors, you just never know. There's no polling done at local level, but I certainly, from the very beginning, and one of the key strategies of my campaign, when I sat down with my campaign team, was to knock on as many doors as was physically possible in the 12 weeks leading up to the polling day. And with a single candidate strategy, that was very, very difficult. But I felt that the more doors I got to and meet as many people as I could to try and, suppose, set out my stall, set out what I achieved in the last 5 years, set out my vision for the next 5 years. And also, one of the key planks of my campaign that I undertook to pursue quietly was that I was going to take the fight to populism, and take the fight to aggression on the doors, and also take the fight to disinformation, which is prevalent so much across our politics here now in Ireland. It's not unique to Ireland, but it's something that is really starting to embed itself, I think, in the political system here since I started as a parliamentary assistant in 2016. It's something that I've seen grown, and it's a real threat to our democracy, and something that I was determined to try and take on, and it was exhausting. It was physically and mentally exhausting, but it's something that I really feel it was reflective of the vote that I got. People said, hold on, this guy is actually going to sit down, he's going to engage with us, he's going to be honest. And I think that's one thing that I really tried to achieve in my campaign. And I think when I saw the tally figures coming in, and in Bar last weekend, it was really I was kind of startled, if you like, but at the same time I figured, this was an endorsement of the type of politics that I was trying to pursue. So really and truly, I think that the centre of Offaly politics is holding, and I think that is really going to bode well for the next general election, whenever that happens.
A couple of things in that there. I suppose the first one, the aggression. Did you experience any of that on the doors, on the campaign trails? I did,
yeah, and certainly more than I would have experienced in the past. Like, I'm involved in politics since I was a teenager, and I think it was certainly a challenge, something I was prepared for. But what I really found difficult was that when you're sending out your supporters and your canvassing teams out on the doors, that you're just hoping that they won't come up with that level of aggression. I had a few experiences where, I was canvassing on my own, because when you're canvassing with teams, if you have an odd number, generally I go to the doors on my own, and I'll have, pairs going to, particularly in the urban centres. I did all the rural canvassing myself, but in the urban centres, that's where, because as I said, I was the only candidate across the 7-seat Tullamore Municipal District, I had to, that's the way we had to run the campaign. But I had a few experiences where I met, significant aggression at the doors. Look, I'm 6'2.5", I have 4 brothers, I'm used to it, I'm used to physical confrontation, but I feel that, and I took people on, I was determined not to take abuse at the doors. I was going to determine to send a message, hold on now, I'm knocking on your door on a Saturday morning, I'm taking time out of my day to try and uphold democracy in our district, and you realise how precious that is. And I feel if you want to engage in a policy discussion, I'm happy to do so, but if you're going to scream and roar and barrack me, I'm going to walk away. And it's amazing when you take the time to actually set out what you're there for and what you're trying to do, how quickly people can say, actually, this is a guy meeting me at a human level, and I would have taken 15-20 minutes to talk to people. And there's a huge amount of disinformation and social media across a range of issues. That's what I was going to ask you. Is it likely it's probably not an actual personal slight on you? It's not a personal attack, I suppose. Is it more of an attack at
centralist politics or
the establishment
in
mainstream
general.
media, this sort of language. It certainly wasn't a personal slight. I mean, I had no personal attacks whatsoever, and I think people were very, very kind and warm and welcoming and recognised my record and my work over the last 5 years. But on those national issues that invariably come up at a local election campaign, they're the things that people were really, really angry about. And obviously migration was the key one. But I lost count at the number of doors where I'd say we have international obligations, and it was like that doesn't exist, because they're being told by certain sinister actors on social media that we don't have international obligations. People are talking about Denmark, the Dublin Convention, but at the end of the day, when you actually explain to people that we are a modern Western democracy and we depend on trade significantly, and that we can't close our borders. And one of the lines I used was the British Army couldn't close the border during the Troubles, so we're not going to do it.
But I think we can control our borders. I think a lot of people, was immigration, was that something that came up as a key topic for people? Yeah,
it was surprising, and it increased as the campaign went on. But then it disappeared from the doors when there was decisions made by government in terms of looking at the payments made to certain international protection applicants, and I think that sent out a message that look, Ireland want to be fair but firm, and that's something that we've looked for in, I suppose, feedback that we've given to our senior party colleagues in Fine Gael was, look, we want to have a fair system where if somebody's entitled to international protection, they get it, we're looked after. But we also want to see a situation where applications are processed in a timely manner, and that because of the nature of international warfare, climate change, there is going to be a significant amount of a number of people who are going to be seeking, I suppose, they're going to be economic migrants, and we have to distinguish between safe countries and economic migrants and also asylum seekers. So I think when you explain that to people realise the challenge that's been faced by the Irish government, but also governments across Europe. And I think that's something that when you took the time to explain, people said, "Okay, I can see where the differentiation is," if you know what I mean. Yeah.
And is that often misinformation, disinformation campaigns, lots of social media activity? Are they just pouring fuel onto the flames of a crisis or a fire that maybe is stemming from things like people's lack of access to housing?
Absolutely,
is housing.
Yeah.
Are those key things like even fuel poverty? Is that something that you're encountering when you speak to people locally?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's happened is the issues are being conflated because, in our own town here in Clonminch, we have developed, well, not the county council, the government through the OPW have developed, 60 modular housing units in Clonminch. And as a county council and as councillors, it was a really bitter pill to swallow because we had no say in terms of planning. It's emergency legislation. We were told this was going to happen. And, there was a lot of controversy at the time. But what's happening there is then people who are on our social housing list are saying, hold on now, I'm on this list for 4, 5, 6, 7 years in some instances. And here we are, we have Ukrainian people coming in, fleeing warfare, and they're being provided with, brand new modular housing. And, that is a challenge for us to try and explain at the doors the situation there. But at all times, I would say, look, they're two separate entities. And I would also say that, if these modular housing units are fine and they're modern, but, they're the size of a small mobile home. And really and truly, I would say that based on the experience I've had with my constituents and people, I've never got a request where people want a smaller unit. They're looking for if they have a 3-bed, they're looking for a 4-bed, they're looking for an extension. So, it's very difficult when those issues are conflated. But, we have a very, very positive story to tell here in County Offaly in terms of the level of new housing, the numbers of new housing that's coming on stream, whether it's direct build by the county councils, by approved housing bodies, or turnkey developments by local developers. And there's no lack of investment coming in. And when you're able to explain that and, point to the number of houses that have been delivered by Offaly County Council through the various schemes with Department of Housing Support over the last 5 years, people say, hold on now, we can see progress. And you don't have to drive too far from this studio to see the number of new housing estates, whether private, a mixture of both, approved housing bodies. So, I think, when you take time to explain, and I would describe it, in terms of the disinformation on social media, it's this kind of rabbit hole. The people, you look at 1 or 2 videos on TikTok or Instagram, and next thing, the algorithms that are set up by these social media companies are saying, oh God, this is going to sell more advertising. This individual's watching this sort of stuff. And next thing, it becomes their belief system. And, we have to challenge that. And I think it all kind of stemmed a little bit from Trump and this sort of idea of mainstream media. But I mean, if we're lucky that we have a very solid mainstream media, and like, look at the job that you've done here in Radio 3 or Midlands 103 with the local elections and the European elections in the last number of months. You've given every candidate a platform. You've given every European candidate an opportunity. And that's something that, from my point of view, from a government policy, I'm delighted to see, say, for example, with this whole discussion of the licence fee, that independent broadcasters like yourselves are going to be supported with the public service broadcasting that you do. So I think, we're in a state of kind of a paradigm now where, in relative terms, social media is relatively new, but we can see where it's actually having a very, very negative impact on potential candidates.
Going to go back to the party strategy in Offaly. You topped the poll by over 500 votes. Was there an opportunity there for Fine Gael to get a second person through, given the centrist vote that we've just seen? But
there was no effort, lack of effort on behalf of the party organisers to try and secure a second or third candidate for Fine Gael. And when you look at and you meet the people, and I've met a lot of potential candidates, and we discussed it and we looked at the opportunities. But a lot of people, particularly, we were obviously trying to, because we're trying to encourage more women into politics, a lot of the candidates we met and had meaningful discussions with looked at social media. Some of them had families and said, look, apart from the difficulty of getting elected, it is a very, very strong district for Fianna Fáil, and that's obviously a party of the centre as well, and they have run an impeccable strategy of 4 candidates. So, when you look at the numbers, I'm not so sure on this occasion if we ran a candidate, whether we would have been successful. Fianna Fáil also got a first-time candidate in from an area not a million miles away from your own home place, which is very close to that kind of Borough Municipal District. Big question, Neil, is when the general election is called, is that something you'll be actively looking at to run for a TD for Offaly? And given that the constituency is changing to Offaly as opposed to Laois Offaly. Well, look, I suppose the first thing I want to do in this situation is congratulate Barry Cowan, who was elected as an MEP yesterday, along with my party colleagues Nina Carberry and Maria Walsh, who ran an absolutely fabulous campaign. And I had hosted Nina here in Tullamore on a couple of occasions, and absolutely wonderful candidate, and really I think is going to have huge potential in the Parliament. But look, we have a number of changes here in terms of the Commission, the boundary review have basically going to create a new constituency of County Offaly, and obviously anybody that gets into politics, anybody that plays sport wants to play senior hurling. So I'm keeping a watchful eye in the next few weeks and months in terms of the party strategy, but something I would absolutely relish. But as well as that, it'll be the membership, the Fine Gael members in County Offaly, who will choose who they want to represent them, who they want to fight a general election, and who they want to see can actually secure a seat for Fine Gael in the new constituency of Offaly, the new 3-seater. Can I just say, I want to just thank all the people who voted for me, and I think that's something that people who got into their cars and took 15 to 20 minutes out of their day to come in and put their number one beside my name or any preference. And I think that is the value of our democracy, that people will actually turn up. And we had in Tullamore area we had a higher turnout than the national average, so I think that was very, very encouraging. So look, long may it last, and thanks very much, Ronan.
Fair play. Thanks, Neil. Talk to you again soon. Up next, a 93% voter turnout for one area in the Midlands local elections.
Saturday View on Midlands 103, with thanks to Cllr Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumcLoonEnergy.com.
Can you imagine a 93% voter turnout? Well, that's what happened in one particular ballot box in the Delvin area for the local elections in Westmeath, an election that saw Sinn Féin's David Jones become a newly elected member of Westmeath County Council. He's been talking to Sinead Hubble from Midlands 103 about why voter turnout was so high for that particular box.
I believe it's because we went 20 years without a councillor in Delvin. Our last councillor was PJ O'Shaughnessy, and we had a councillor before that, Tom Lenihan, who died in 1979. And definitely with 3 local candidates running in these local elections, there was a great buzz about the town. There was huge social media campaigns put on. I put on a big social media campaign. I really do feel like TikTok got the message out there. It got young people. Young people text me, ringing me, how do I register to vote? Some of them unfortunately missed the deadline on the 20th of May, but look, we got an awful lot of young people registered to vote, and I believe the young people really came out in strength. But not only that, I had a 197-year-old come out to vote for me as well.
Wow, so that's incredible. So it was all ages.
It wasn't just the young people. Yeah, it was all ages. We had, but definitely there was a great buzz about the town. Delvin definitely wanted to return the councillors, and you could see that with a large turnout. I think it was the largest in the country. I haven't heard anything different.
And it really shows that people wanted to use their voice then to make a difference. As you said, there had been no councillor or no representative in the area for over 20 years. Do you think that Delvin has missed out because of that?
We've definitely missed out on funding opportunities over the years. Like I see not only Delvin, but you see it in Clmellan, you see it in Drumcree, you see it in all the smaller areas, Glenaden. All the smaller areas and towns have kind of been forgotten about just because the local representatives haven't been just as active in them areas, whereas my priority would be the small towns and villages, whilst not forgetting about the larger towns. You see the county development plan, unfortunately is not working for the smaller towns and communities. The regeneration plans for towns and villages start off with the higher populations and work its way down to lower populations, while not looking at the population in rural areas outside the likes of Delvin, outside the likes of Clmellan, So whilst we would have a stronger population than some of these denser areas, we're kind of left on a low tier on the county development plan, and that's exactly why we're being forgotten about on funding opportunities, and because we haven't had a local representative in 20 years.
We went from not having a single councillor in the area to now having two, with Niall Gaffney also making it across the line in the last couple of days to be elected for the area. Was there any concern at any stage that the vote might be split between yourself from Sinn Féin and Fianna Fáil, and the area missing out on having that rep?
There definitely was concerns. Like, if you look think about a smaller turnout, you'd wonder if the two of us would have gotten over the line, but we got there, we got over the line. It's great that we have two local county councillors now elected, and regardless of parties, we'll work together for the betterment of not only Delvin, but each and every area that we will represent. It's nearly like referring to them buses. You have none, and then they all arrive at once. But with my father being a bus driver, I can't say that too loud.
And David, tell me about your campaign then, because you said you really relied heavily on social media. And while we heard Kevin Boxer-Moran, who topped the poll in Westmeath, crossing the line with over 3,000 votes, saying that he didn't use social media, that he went old school politics, knocked on the doors of over, I think, 9,000 houses to get those votes. So what did you do differently then?
Well, still knocked on the doors. I done both. I done social media, knocked on the doors, and I stayed involved in my community as I always have done. I moved to Delvin 20 years ago from Ballyfermot, and from the day I moved into Delvin, I got involved in my community, from marking the lines of the pitch with the GAA grounds before anyone knew me out there, to stone picking at the local soccer club at the time. I really got involved in the community. I got out there from a young age, not even with the intention of going on for council at that time. I wasn't looking for votes at that time when I was involved in the community, and I do feel like it's definitely paid off. Being chairman of the local St. Patrick's Day parade after being assistant secretary for maybe 4, 5, 6 years, being involved with Christmas lights, being involved with being a founding member of the tractor run we started in 2013, and not only that, supporting other communities, supporting other causes, supporting local groups and committees. That's definitely paid off. And whilst you say yes, you would like to see the money's being spread around. Without these local groups, without these local volunteers, definitely, the money can't come to these areas, because all these committees are dependent on volunteers who give up much of their time, and you have to credit them as well. And I have to credit all the people that helped me. Not only Sinn Féin members, but the community really rallied around me. Other communities rallied around me, and I was there for the past number of years to come to. From working with Johnny Gurkin TV and Circuit Clark, we ensured that we weren't left without advice, even though I wasn't elected, or put in the groundwork.
And did you get any negative feedback then from all the work that you were doing on social media and sharing the videos and the TikToks?
Oh, look, like you're bound to get negative feedback no matter what you do. Those that do good always get some sort of negative feedback from someone sitting behind the keyboard. I suppose I would have dealing with some online abuse from someone sitting behind the keyboard up in Dublin, and that's ongoing at the moment. So that's the nasty side of it. But I did grow a thick skin, and I'm working for the community. I'm working for the people in the constituency. I'm not working for that man that's giving abuse, that has all day to sit around giving people abuse while he does nothing for his community. He does nothing for the constituents. He does nothing for the housing or the health crisis. How many protests have these people stood at, giving out about the health service, giving out about housing? Not one.
Because we've heard from other politicians that they were trying to get people to put their name on the ballot paper, but because of the negativity and the feedback that they were getting, or they were afraid that they'd get online, that they wouldn't even put their name down. So how do you deal with that then if somebody's kind of attacking you online? Because it's easy to say, yes, you have a thick skin, but you still have to kind of take that in on board at some point.
Look, sometimes it does creep in on you, but them people aren't working for their communities, so I would have been told and asked, are you sure about going on for these local elections if that's the abuse you're getting? And when I say nasty abuse, that's exactly what I was getting.
What kind of things were said to you, David?
Oh, look, I just don't want to go into too many details on the radio, just with what's going on at the moment. But these are people that have nothing had to say. They don't know me personally. Those that know me personally will always tell you I'm there for them, no matter what. And regardless of what the outcome of the election had been, I would have been there for them, and I would have stayed involved in my community. But I can definitely see how some candidates may have been put off because of the abuse they receive. And at the end of the day, we all have one job to do. We have to go out and represent the people that have voted us into these positions.
And David, can I ask you about Sinn Féin? Nationally, it doesn't look like the party made as much gains as expected to, but locally seem to have bucked the trend, with 5 seats being gained across Laois, Offaly and Westmeath over the last couple of days. Particularly in Westmeath, 2 new faces on the council. And in Offaly we had 3, and the 2 seats that were held in Laois were retained. How do you think that this area, and why do you think this area managed to buck that trend?
Well, it definitely a good bit of groundwork was done, and these areas being left without councillors. Local politics is completely different than national politics. People are voting local. People are voting for the person. Sinn Féin are being criticised currently for not doing as well as they thought. We still made gains. We didn't lose any seats, which was the main thing. We see Fianna Fáil lost seats. We see Fine Gael lost seats, from what I'm aware. We see the Green Party lost seats, Sinn Féin gained seats, and that in itself is a bonus.
David Jones, newly elected councillor for Sinn Féin in County Westmeath, they're talking to Midlands 103 Sinead Hubble after the break, reflecting on Aontú's performance in the local and European election.
Saturday View on Midlands 103, with thanks to Cllr Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. Cllrenergy.com.
The Aontú party, led by Peadar Tóbín, secured 8 seats in the local council elections. Peadar had ran for the Midlands North West constituency. He was eliminated there on the 18th count, and again what we know was a marathon count. Peadar joins me now. Very good morning, Peadar. Are you still awake after what has been a marathon session up in Mayo?
It has been a tough session, there's no doubt about it, so I'm looking forward to getting a good few early nights now for the next week to recharge the batteries. But it's been a great election, so that makes it easier for us to deal with the exhaustion. We're delighted with the vote we got across the country, and we hit 65,000 votes in the European elections, which is a 25,000 vote increase for us from the highest previous. It's around 4% of the vote, again the highest ever. And Aontú came ahead of Labour Soc Dems and people before profit in the European elections, I think, which is, significantly impressive for a party that's only 5 years old and that has no state funding whatsoever. And that the fact that we are outcompeting those political parties in terms of votes. In the locals, we got a great vote as well. We got about 5.4% in the local areas that we ran in. We only ran in about 40% of the constituencies across the country. But in the likes of Rosslare and Wexford, Jim Codd got 24% of the vote, which is a great foundation there for a Dáil seat. Sarah O'Reilly topped the poll for us in Ballioborough, again another foundation for a Dáil seat. We made the breakthrough in Dublin for the first time, two Aontú councillors in Dublin, and a new councillor there in Mayo, Paul Lawless, made a breakthrough there, and we made a breakthrough in Limerick City with Sarah Beasley. Now there's about another 5 or 6 areas where we just hit the crossbar. The worst one was in Kildare, where we lost by 2 votes on the 5th count. So in other words, there was 1 full count and there was 4 recounts. And each of those counts provided a different figure, believe it or not. But in the heat of the hunt, we had a great candidate there, but she just lost by a couple of votes, which shows you every vote counts in these elections.
What do you think really worked for you this time? While it's not a collapse in vote for Sinn Féin, the vote they got was nowhere near what maybe many people had initially predicted, but your own stance with Aontú being sort of left of centre economically but socially conservative, is that what people are looking for, and do you expect to be able to really build on that for the next general election?
Yeah, so I think what really people were looking for, they were looking for common sense in these elections. I really think that what's happened in Irish politics over the last 10 years is the political establishment have generated into a bubble where they're simply not listening to the people. And, many of the people in the country are just scratching their heads, listening to these politicians in the political establishment, not being able to relate to them at all because, they're talking nearly a different language in terms of these issues that we're dealing with. And, Aontú was founded 5 years ago to stand up for what we believed in. And, we've done that consistently for the last 5 years. We haven't gone with whichever way the wind blows, and as a result, that's really stood to us in these terms. And I think that people liked our common sense policies on these issues. Many people still haven't heard of us, believe it or not, so we're still introducing ourselves in many areas. We had Martha Ryan there in Portlaoise and Aubrey Caffey in the Burr area, who did fantastic work for us there. And a lot of their work was kind of introducing Aontú to the people there for the first time. And then we had Laura O'Neill standing then in the Kinnegad area in Westmeath, again introducing Aontú to the people there too. So I think we have a really good foundation to build on, and our membership has gone up to 2,000 members across the country. We are very much a grassroots, people-powered organisation, so we have 60 coming around the country. And people often ask me, how do they change things? And it's a very simple formula. It's membership plus activism equals change. We were hearing from a lot of Sinn Féin voters and supporters that they were voting for Aontú in this election because they couldn't believe the amount of times Sinn Féin had flip-flopped on many issues. So, even during this campaign, I couldn't get over it because you had this strange situation where Sinn Féin were asked, do they support border checks along the border now? And 5 occasions they said yes. And that goes against a core value of Sinn Féin, that there should be no border in Ireland. That's the purpose of Sinn Féin. And here they were flipping on that issue.
And of course, as you plot your own strategy now, as we move forward as well, general election in sight, widely predicted to be late October, early November at the latest. You're also going to run candidates in the elections in Northern Ireland, so there's no sleep for you, I think, in the next 6 or 8 months anyway. But when it comes to actually selecting there and looking at how many candidates you'll run in a general election, what's your preferred strategy going to be, given that you've seen people are becoming more aware of who the party are, who the candidates are? Are you like to try to run as many as you can, or will you have to be really focused and targeted in just trying to increase your number of seats incrementally over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I suppose there's 2 things. One thing is that people have become angry with the government and with the political establishment and the likes of Sinn Féin. But the one danger of that is that the vote gets scattered amongst a whole range of different independents and a whole range of different micro-organisations. And in actual fact, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael would love that, because if the vote is scattered across so many different groups, it has no real material effect in challenging the government. And that's why I would really encourage people to realise that Aontú is probably the only cohesive, well-organised machine across the country that's able to gather votes in every ballot box across the country and able to challenge the government. The second thing is, obviously, we didn't get state funding up until this stage, and that's really, really important for a political party. People mightn't realise that, but to I suppose, sustain a political movement such as ours on volunteerism and fresh air, if you like, over a long period of time, puts an awful toll on individuals, and it's just very, very hard. So we need to get state funding to be able to employ people to, better organise and better develop policy and better develop legislation. So that's why it's important for us to get at least over the 2% on the next occasion. On that basis, we are going to run a candidate in every Dáil constituency across the country, so everybody will have a chance to vote for Aontú. But we do understand as well that we need to grow and we need to add Dáil seats in there. And then the other issue I just put out to people here as well, there are independents out there who agree exactly with what we think about, who would be in line with our politics, and I would encourage them to reach out to us. United, we are far stronger in terms of pushing back against the damage that this government is doing.
Back to your own bid to become an MEP, as eliminated after the 18 count. Just from your own perspective, the size of the constituency, Midlands, North West, 15 counties, over 800,000 votes cast, whilst it was a great example of democracy and the PR system in action, does it need to be revisited in terms of the area of it and maybe how votes, like should there be a runoff to exclude certain candidates, given there was 27 on the ballot paper?
Well, I'd be very, very, very cautious about excluding anybody. I'm very much in the belief of a democracy, and that it's necessary to be able to allow for every citizen to be able to stand for election. So I'd be very cautious in relation to that. The other issue that I would say is, one of the dangers I think we're entering in is we're entering to the period of a celebrity politician now. And because of the size of these constituencies, it's very hard for any individual to gain enough currency and enough recognition to be able to compete in these elections. But if you're 20 years in RTE, or if you're on Strictly Come Dancing, or if you're on any of these gigs, basically, well, then you have a far bigger advantage of gaining recognition from the people. Now, what kind of really frustrated me, and I want to congratulate everybody that won, but I just felt that Nina Carberry, for example, she spent 4 minutes in public debate on the issues of concern to people, and that was it was strategically designed by Fine Gael not to let her to engage with these debates, because they were worried that would negatively affect her support the more she spoke in public. And I think that if we want somebody to have a strong voice for us in Europe, they need to be able to have the detail to be able to debate the issues in public in advance of an election. And these types of kind of controlled, managed campaigns by the likes of Fine Gael, preventing candidates going on to debates so they're not caught out in many ways before the election, that's a difficulty there. And I also heard Kieran Malooly complain that he wasn't on the RTE debate in advance of the election. But the reason why people know him is because he was an RT for 10, 15 years, etc. So, I wish these candidates these MEPs look, but they are going to have a very steep learning curve now, going from zero political experience to trying to represent, the well over 1 million people that live in this constituency.
And suppose if that was put to the Fine Gael party, they'd say, well, look at Maria Walsh as an example, right? She was known primarily as the Rose Tralee. She's been done 5 years as an MEP, and she was re-elected. So clearly she's doing something right there. And
I do think, given the size of these constituencies, what's happening is celebrity is an enormous currency. And the first part of an election is to make sure that you're known. Now, my instinct is that really politics should be about normal people who, on the basis of merit, on the basis of hard work, on the basis of their ability to analyse legislation and the situations and ideas, on the ability of them to be able to stand up for what they believe in, they should be the ingredients for which people are elected. My view is that if you go down the route of celebrity, where you don't have, let's say, political experience or ability to debate publicly or the knowledge necessary, that's going to cause a difficulty for this region. And this region, we need investment because we have fallen back in terms of income over the last 10 years. You know, the Midlands Northwest region has actually fallen below the European average income at the moment. And, you know, that is an issue that is so important. We need the strongest, most robust team possible in Brussels as a result.
Peadar Tóbín is a TD for Meath West and the leader of Aontú. A recent survey has shown that more than half of LGBT plus people have considered leaving the Midlands because of their identity. To look at this a little bit more, I'm delighted to be joined by Christina Fitzharris, Project Coordinator with Midlands LGBT plus. Very good morning, Christina.
Morning, Ronan.
The survey was carried out and conducted by Dr. Ingrid Holmes with over 244 respondents. Can you take us through some of the key findings of it, please?
So this was quite a long project. Took a year and a half to kind of really get into the lives of LGBT adults in the Midlands, what their experiences were, what their satisfaction was in the Midlands. So we took quite a long time to kind of really, before we even did the survey, to figure out what questions we needed to ask and where was the key areas of concern. We're looking at, you know, it's the first piece of research that's kind of come out of the Midlands like this, so it wasn't applicable to look at, I suppose, national ones that looked more at, you know, housing and was that affecting them and stuff. It was quite different. So, but the results are no less stark, I'm afraid. As you said there, over 54% of people in the Midlands, LGBT adults, have thought about leaving the Midlands because of their sexuality or their gender identity.
It's even shown that 25% of respondents they're not out to anybody in their workplace, 31% haven't come out to their neighbours, and 42% often avoid holding hands with their partner in public out of fear as well. And as you say, 20% don't feel safe in the Midlands, so quite stark given, you know, we're a number of years now since the marriage equality vote passed as well. Are you sensing that with the work you do within the group? Are you sensing that these fears are really there, present in the Midlands? And I guess, what can be done to start mitigating those fears?
Unfortunately, I've worked in this area for a long time, and I would say the last 12 to 18 months is probably the hardest and the worst years that I've put in it for LGBT fear, not just in the Midlands, I think in Ireland in general, or maybe even in the world in general, that in 10 plus years. And I often come back to the 25% are out to no one at work, and that might seem like, you know, the biggest statistics here, but, you know, imagine going into work every day and you're trying, maybe you have a partner and you're in the staff room and you're trying to make gender neutral pronouns so they don't, you know, figure out that you're with a woman or you're married to a man, etc. That's very heavy to be carrying in to your job every, you know, and, you know, even without them pressures, going to work and doing everything every day is tough enough without these added pressures.
Absolutely. And I guess, you know, lots of workplaces are trying to take action. They're trying to bring in more diversity, inclusivity programs, but that also is not filtering down to all workplaces. In terms of the survey, like, is that one outcome that you would look at, or one part of this and say, as a grouping now, this is something we can maybe try to address and at least lobby for maybe changes there within employment law departments, whatever? What would next actions be based on the survey?
Yeah, so I would sit on a lot of the national boards that would, you know, talk directly to government and stuff, and I would bring that to them. But also it's a very useful statistic. All of these are for me because I go into, say, workplaces all around the Midlands, especially in June and Pride Month, and I talk to them and I can say to them, well, look, this research is really relevant. You're talking about the people that are working, you know, in the Midlands, and it's really up to date, and this is what they're feeling. So if you're having, you know, senior management team meetings about diversity and inclusion, how are we making sure that's filtering down? And look, and it's not just in the workplace, because, you know, some people are really happy in the workplace, but then there's statistics like only 16% of people were happy with the number of friends they have. And I found that really, really harrowing, that, you know, people they're lonely, and I think that's what that really says is LGBT adults in the Midlands, they're, you know, we're seeing them reach out to us in far more numbers than we have in the last couple of years, because they're just lonely and they're reaching breaking point for getting that connection with other people.
And is that a connection with people in general, or is it an actual disconnection, maybe due to lack of exposure and connection with other members of the LGBT plus community?
Yeah, and that's something we're actually looking at right now, and it seems to be a little bit of both. So if someone wasn't out, then, you know, that would really kind of make it difficult for them to make a connection with people that were not LGBT if they were holding that in, you know. But when they're out, then that doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter as much if they could, you know, have a connection of friends no matter who they were. But then if they weren't out, yes, it is the connection of LGBT peers that they really need to help support them at that time.
And did the survey indicate any kind of difference or disparity between maybe approaches or attitudes in rural communities versus more urban centres?
To be honest, we expected more of a disparity, but there wasn't as much of a disparity. And actually, some of the respondents really considered, I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but a lot of respondents actually considered the Midlands to be a safer place than Dublin, that they would prefer to live here than Dublin, and that they considered it a much more unsafe than now, which is not something that I expected. And a lot of them, you know, the general consensus is that some of them had already left and they really wanted to come back, and they really, really wanted change in their local communities. You know, maybe they had aging parents, etc. And they left a lot of comments saying that they wish they could move back to X small village, and thanked us for the work that we were doing, that they hope that they could one day come back.
Yeah, and absolutely, and it should not be a problem at all. But it sounds a really in-depth survey. I think it's a fantastic body of work. If people would like to find out more, maybe see a copy of it, or indeed make contact with your group as well, because as I say, the lack of kind of connection and a bit of disconnection is one key factor in it as well. How can they find out more about you?
Absolutely, and again, even coming on radios like this, you know, we're always so grateful to get on. We get calls after every station like this, saying from people that maybe are elderly and don't have the internet or don't have connections to another, and they get ways to contact us. So thank you for that. But yeah, you can get us at midlandslgbtproject.com. You can find all of their contact details. You can also find this resource there. And yeah, if you want to make contact, all of our phone numbers and emails are on the website.
Brilliant. Christina Fitzharris, Project Coordinator at Midlands LGBT Plus Community. Thank you so much for that, and keep up the great work.
Thanks a million, Ronan. Take care.
And that brings Saturday View to a close for this week. A big thank you to Cllr Neil Feighery and to Peadar Tóbín from Aontú for their perspectives on the recent elections, and looking forward, of course, to the impending general election. I'll be back on Saturday View next week. Look forward to talking to you all then. Lorraine's here next with Feel Good Saturday. Have a great weekend.
Saturday View, with thanks to Cllr Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. cllrenergy.com. Midlands 103.